Hi everyone, it's Josie Lee Gibson here from OARC. It's 2:30, so I think we're going to get started. I wanted to both welcome you and to thank you for joining us this afternoon for today's webinar on Residence Councils and RNAO's Best Practice Guidelines, Person and Family-Centered Care. A few housekeeping items just before we begin. This session is being recorded for educational purposes and will be posted on OARC's website as an archived webinar. And just to let you know that we have muted all lines just to minimize background noise and distraction. We will, however, hold a question period at the end, at which point you can certainly unmute your line or write in through the chat box, which is located at the bottom of your toolbar. And so I'd like to introduce to you our speakers for today, Suman and Frida. Suman is the Senior Manager of the Long-Term Care Best Practices Program at the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, RNAO. And Frida is a Long-Term Care Best Practice Coordinator working with the long-term care homes in the Northeast LHIN currently, but will be transitioning to the North Simcoe Muskoka LHIN effective January 2019. So I welcome you both, and I will now pass it over to Frida and Suman.
Hey, good afternoon, Josie Lee and Jennifer, and thank you for everyone for joining and inviting us to do this presentation. I am the Senior Manager for the Long-Term Care Best Practices Program at RNAO, and Frida and I will be talking to you about the Person and Family-Centered Care Guideline. We'll give you a brief overview of our long-term care program and talk to you about some of the connections that we see between the Through Our Eyes program at resident councils and the RNAO Best Practice Guideline on Person and Family-Centered Care. So RNAO, as some of you will know, is the professional association for nurses and nurse practitioners and nursing students in Ontario. The membership side is quite focused on the advocacy, and we are one of the programs at RNAO that is managed within the House for the Best Practice Guideline program, which is a signature program of RNAO and has been consistently funded through the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care of Ontario since 1999. And the main purpose of this program is to develop, disseminate, and actively support the uptake of evidence-based practices, both for clinical and the healthy work environment. And we also support with evaluation of the impact on resident and the organization and the overall healthcare sector. So goals of the Best Practice Guideline program are to actually reduce the variation in care, and it does that through providing set recommendations for areas that healthcare providers can implement in their workplace setting, regardless of where you work. And it increases the knowledge base of each of the professionals. It also assists you with clinical decision making, identifies some gaps in research, and at times, it actually helps us stop some of the interventions that we have been doing, and overall, it does reduce cost for healthcare sector. So the BPG program actually follows a very strict program for guideline development, and you see this 4 circles that are provided here for guideline development, dissemination and implementation and sustainability. It also looks at evaluation and monitoring, and then finally the overall impact. I'm very quickly going to walk you through some of these, each of the steps, and then Frida is going to take over for the Person and Family-Centered Care Guideline. So overall, RNAO has a number of guidelines that fall under the foundational, population and public health, system and healthy work environment, and clinical, and we also have some implementation toolkits. All of these are available on the RNAO website. So what does evidence-based practice mean? It actually provides you with patient and preferences and circumstances. It provides you some context, and allows the healthcare professional, whether it's a nurse or any other healthcare professionals, to actually use their clinical judgment and their expertise with the knowledge that is scientific and it's evidence-based. So the guidelines recommendations that are provided in each of the best practice guideline have three different areas of recommendations. One and foremost is, what is it that the nurse or the professional needs to do? What is it that the nurse and the team need to know? And then what does the organization or the system need to have in place to create a culture of evidence-based? Our program actually falls into the dissemination and implementation sustainability circle, as you can see here. And we do this by multiple levels. We look at it from the individual level and provide support for Champions Network, Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship, Nursing Order Sets, Best Practice Guideline app, the RNAO communities, and also professional development. So over the period of years, RNAO has prepared thousands of champions, and I'm hoping that some of you on the line today have either participated in the workshops or the virtual networks to become a best practice champion, and you can see that they have them in 4 different areas. The Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship supports a nurse as a knowledge professional. Now, this is specific funding that is provided by the Ministry of Health for RNs only. For RPNs, the funding is provided through RPNAO. And this is focused on supporting that individual nurse for professional development. However, the organization benefits from the project that the nurse provides or completes in the organization. There are various means of professional development that we offer. Wound Care Institute is one of that usually occurs February or March. The Nursing Clinical Best Practice Guideline Institute, or usually people call it the Summer Institute, takes place in June. Nurse Executive Leadership Academy is mainly focused on nurses in formal leadership role, chief nursing executives, director of cares, and such. Healthy Work Environment used to be a 5-day workshop series, has actually been converted into a webinar series for now, because that is became a little bit challenging for leaders to be leaving their organization for a length of time. At the organizational level, we look at best practice spotlight organizations, or BPSOs. Now, these occur in quite different formats, and I'm going to be speaking to you about the one that is specific to long-term care best practices program. So we do have long-term care homes that are part of the BPSO work, and our main goal is to support long-term care homes in systematically implementing best practice guidelines. So this is a 3-year period that happens. It's a contract process that takes place between RNAO and the long-term care home to partner with the long-term care program and systematically implement 3 best practice guidelines, supporting their organizational structure, what they already have in place, looking at some of the reporting structures that need to be in place, doing some knowledge exchange. And main thing is to sustain and spread the practice changes, and of course measure it through outcomes through the standardized indicators that are available. Now, in total, we have 630 long-term care homes. Out of that, you can see that there are 38 long-term care BPSO homes at this time. So there, as you can see on the map, they're spread right across the province. Quickly going to go through this list as well. We started this process in 2014, and in 2017 we had our first 3 organizations representing 7 long-term care homes actually achieve designation, and they are our inaugural long-term care homes that last year, or actually earlier this year, 2018, we had 2 other long-term care homes join this group of long-term care BPSO designates. We currently have 3 groups, starting from cohort C, that are part of the 2016 to 2019 partnership. So coming up pretty soon, they are in their last year of completing their guideline implementation, and will be joining the designate group in 2019. April 2019 at the RNAO AGM. We had another group join us in 2017, and their cycle continues till 2020. We have all different types of homes, standalone and multi-site homes, whether they are municipal or for-profit organizations. And in cohort E, we have more homes that had joined, and you'll be hearing from one of that home today about their experience in using the Person and Family-Centered Care Guideline along with the Through Our Eyes program for resident councils. Cohort E was a fairly large group, and you see them all over here. So we do actually have a call out for cohort F, which is our sixth group that is going to be starting their journey from April 2019 to 2022. So this request for proposal is actually out. If you want to go onto our website, you'll be able to see the application process for that. And here are the dates that are available for that are of importance for this RFP. We just released this in a webinar on October 4th, and the letter of intent for this is due on November 12th. The presentation is available to you, so you will have access to these dates that are available. The website that is provided actually has the RFP if you need to have that. So at a systems level is where our long-term care best practices program comes. And this is a program that has been funded by Ontario Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. And the main focus of this program is to support long-term care homes in creating a culture of evidence-based practice and encouraging staff in long-term care home to implement the RNAO best practice guidelines. So going over a brief history of the long-term care program, some of you may know this program as being part of the Circle of Care for Long-Term Care. It started way back in 2005 as a program that was managed by the Ministry of Health Performance and Improvement Compliance Branch. In 2008, this program was transferred over to RNAO. Since then, it has been managed by RNAO and has been expanded to have a total of 15 long-term care best practices coordinator. 14 of them work directly within the LHIN boundaries with the long-term care homes in each of the LHIN. In 2014, as I already mentioned, we had the launch for the long-term care best practice spotlight organizations, and in 2017 we had our inaugural BPSO designates. As you can see from this map, Frida is here in LHIN 13 right now, and you see me up in the upper left-hand corner. 14 of our coordinators are spread right across the province, and there's a few of us that support from home office. So we are going to look at the role of the coordinator, and I'm going to ask Frida if she can speak to that, since she works directly with the homes in LHIN 13 currently. Frida, over to you.
Thank you, Suman, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm just going to speak to our role as long-term care best practice coordinators. And as you can see here, there's some specific things that we do in our role, but I'm also going to kind of build on that a bit as to some other things that come into play. So ultimately, we all cover one LHIN across the province. So there's 14 of us, as you can see by the previous picture. And we all go out and we look for opportunities to promote the use of the evidence-based practice guidelines in the long-term care home sectors. And we work with the homes to develop plans for implementation of the guidelines, which include strategies to facilitate and sustain and spread, and promote and support capacity development and transfer of knowledge and that type of thing. So ultimately, through our roles, we're really lucky because having 14 of us across the province, when we work with homes and that if they're looking for specific things, we are able to engage with each other across the province and share ideas, share knowledge and that type of thing, and pull together homes sometimes just to support each other. You know, given a case in that, for example, we were working with one home on looking at pain in the home and doing gap analysis, and a couple of the homes from the south and the coordinators, one of the coordinators was able to support the two LINs in the north in the homes there to work through getting gaps and doing a gap in that. So that's a really nice plus for us. So here it just shows the strategies of our program, and we raise awareness, engage with the homes, build capacity, as I spoke to, implement, integrate, and evaluate. So a way of supporting the homes in that is some of our resources, and this is one of our very well-used resources. It's our long-term care best practice toolkit. So if anyone on the line or on the webinar isn't familiar with it, don't hesitate to get on and use it, look at it for any types of resources, you know, in regards to the programs you have within the home, healthy work environment. It speaks, there's resources in there for program planning and evaluation. And now we've just started a story section as well. So if you have a story to tell, don't hesitate to reach out to your coordinator and share it and hopefully get it put into the toolkit. And if you can't find something in the toolkit, don't hesitate to reach out to your coordinator as well and let them know what you're looking for, because they can help you navigate maybe in some other source. And here's a nursing orientation e-resource for long-term care. This particular resource is a free resource, and it's designed to enhance the orientation programs and processes for nurses in long-term care. It includes evidence-based knowledge and resources that are beneficial to direct care. And it's great for nurses in management positions as well, and consultants who provide practice support in the homes. It covers 4 knowledge domains. So professional, role, clinical, and organizational domains. I remember it used to be in a binder back in the early 2000s, and we've come a long way. And so on this slide, you see our e-learning resources. There's a number of them. So there is one for preventing and addressing abuse and neglect of older adults, and the 3Ds, delirium, dementia, and depression. And they as well are free. You can just go on to our website, rnao.ca, and find them. And there's also the direct links here. So as well, we do communities of practice, and there you hear the definition you see from the Canadian Health Service Research Foundation. It speaks to a community of practice being groups of people who share concern or passion for something they do and learn to do it better through regular interaction. So quite often the coordinators and across the province will have communities of practice and engage a number of homes to share their learning and work through processes. And this is our toolkit. So our toolkit supports the implementation of best practice guidelines. If anyone's taken a Champions workshop or done the workshop online, the toolkit is provided, and it is on our website at no charge in English and French, as you can see. So it supports the process of knowledge to action, which you see here. So, and the systematic approach to the implementation of guidelines. So we've spoke to this already, the implementation toolkit, and then here is the gap analysis tool. So within our toolkit as well, you can go under the different guidelines that are in the long-term care toolkit, and you can find the gap analysis tool. The coordinators across the province use this tool to support the homes to look for where there may be gaps, but it also speaks to what the home is doing, like as far as opportunity or what they're doing well, what they're meeting, what they're partially meeting, and what they may want to work on. So it's a great resource that you can use to contribute to your annual evaluation, because it allows you to compare practice from year to year and choose which areas you want to focus on changing within the year. And it provides a focus for needed practice change. It also informs for next steps, such as development of infrastructure to support implementation, stakeholder engagement, identification of barriers and facilitators, and resource requirements. And it leads to the ability to have a sustainable practice change by informing plans related to the process and staff and organization, and reinforces, evidence-based practice across the home. So I'm just going to pass it back to Suman for a few more slides, and then we'll pull it back together to speak to the person and family-centered care guidelines specifically, and on ORC's through our EYES program.
Okay, thank you, Frida. So we're very quickly going to talk about some of the evaluation and monitoring that we support the long-term care homes with. So from the time you think about implementing a best practice guideline, and if, for example, you want to implement the Falls best practice guideline, you actually need to know why is it that you're wanting to make this change happen. So we start the evaluation process right from pre-implementation phase. And in order to know that you're making improvement, you need to continue to do that monitoring and that evaluation through implementation, post-implementation, and then of course the most important of that is the sustainability that needs to be maintained through the monitoring program. We're going to look at some of the impact that implementing best practices has taken place at some of the organizations. So this is one long-term care home that had implemented the best practice guideline on alternative approaches to use of restraint. And as you can see that from the time they started implementing that, they have seen tremendous improvement and remain a restraint-free home at this point. Another organization that had implemented multiple best practice guidelines through the BPSO program, and prior to that as well, they have continued to work with their coordinator in implementing multiple best practice guidelines. And as you can see from this graph, almost all their indicators are showing improved resident outcomes. Another organization that has been working on decreasing falls in their organization actually used a comfort care rounding program where residents were monitored on a purposeful round. They actually did a presentation for this, and you can see through the implementation process how they have monitored their continued improvement. And how that implementing one practice change has made a difference to the number of falls that they are having in their organization. Overall, there's a story about our resident. This particular organization implemented the oral care best practice guideline. And although they had improvement throughout their organization, one particular resident had the most impact, where his personal life was impacted, his social life was impacted because of poor, ill-fitting dentures. And through the interventions that the staff used for this gentleman, he actually started becoming social again with other residents within the building, and totally improved his outlook and his day-to-day life, and overall quality of life was improved. And so this is just the program through the regular implementation of best practice guidelines. So one of the things that we have been doing is we have been showcasing some of the stories of implementation from various organizations in the long-term care sector to talk about some of the good news stories that are taking place, and we're calling them evidence boosters. You can see from the link that is provided that we have so far in the year and a half, we have published 8 evidence boosters, and they're available for all of you to use through the website. They can be downloaded and printed to share with your frontline staff. And if any of you, as Frida mentioned, are doing some work on implementation for improving resident outcome or improving the staff healthy work environment, reach out to your coordinators and we can support you with your storytelling and sharing that either on our toolkit or through an evidence booster. And I'm actually going to hand it over now to Frida to talk about the most important reason why we're here today is looking at some of the correlation between the Person and Family-Centered Care Guideline and Through Our Eyes program. And we have a couple of the organizations that are going to be sharing their experience in using these two resources. So take it away, Frida.
Thanks, Suman. So before I get into this slide, I just two things want to mention. I'm not sure of the whole audience because I can't see everyone, but what I would like to have you think about before we move into the Person and Family-Centered Care Guideline itself is if you aren't familiar with the Ontario Association of Resident Council Through Our Eyes program, every home in the province was mailed out a binder with the program in it. So after the webinar, take a few moments and find it within the home. I believe it went to every administrator in the home. And the other thing to think about is how your home currently does their education on resident rights. And I mention that just because in my past experience and my current experience, I've found that our legislation, and everything speaks to making sure that our staff are familiar with the resident rights, but do we really do a deep dive into it? And so what I'm going to speak to in the next slides and have a couple of homes share is how to go about doing that. So transforming to a culture of person and family-centered care. So our Person and Family-Centered Care Guideline was released in 2015. And the purpose of the guideline was to promote evidence-based practices that are associated with person and family-centered care, and to help us acquire the knowledge and skills to become more adept at practicing person and family-centered care. So this slide just speaks to what the definition of person and family-centered care is and the approach and how it demonstrates practices that puts the person or the resident and their family members at the center of the health care and services. And it respects and empowers them as individuals to be partners, real partners with their health and with their providers. So the purpose of our Person and Family-Centered Care Guideline was to promote the practice of person and family-centered care, to help with the knowledge and skills to become more adept at practicing person and family-centered care, gain the knowledge to partner and develop these relationships with the residents and or their families, and do it in an evidence-based approach that recognizes the place of the person as being the center of health, their health care, and improving their experience and satisfaction with care and services that we're providing. So in the guideline itself, there are what we call practice recommendations. In the person and family-centered care, there's also education and system organization and policy recommendations. This particular guideline has 9 practice recommendations, and they are directly, related to the interprofessional team to support the team in providing direct care to the residents. And then there's 2 education recommendations and 4 of the system organization and policy recommendations. So in speaking to that, when you look at the recommendations in this guideline, they are a direct reflection of the ORAC's Through Our Eyes program. And they're supported by the evidence that includes the approaches to partnerships, communication strategies, empowering behavior, some documentation practices, and assessment processes. So examples of person and family-centered care approaches do include, empowering the residents to be actively involved in their decision-making, giving them autonomy and their right to self-determination, the sharing of evidence-based options for their care, giving them education, and information that is unbiased, clear, and comprehensive, and respecting them, the residents themselves, and personalizing their care by identifying their strengths and their knowledge, what they prefer, their goals, values, culture, and their experience of health, so the whole person. So some common themes in the person and family-centered care guideline are, establishing a therapeutic relationship for a true partnership, continuity of care, and shared decision-making. And that care is organized around respectful of the resident, knowing the whole resident, the whole person, communicating, collaborating, and engaging with the resident. So, making the connection. How is the person and family-centered care best practice guideline connected to OARC's Through Our Eyes, Bringing the Resident Bill of Rights Alive program? Well, when I asked myself this, I said, how is it not connected? I actually went through the program and went there, the Through Our Eyes program, and went through our person and family-centered care guideline and recognized that the program itself meets almost all of the recommendations in the person and family-centered care guideline. So a couple of the quotes that I've taken just out of the Through Our Eyes binder are here. So they're ones that just caught my attention, and I thought they were very impactful. And the first one is that this program was developed through the lens of culture change, upholding the philosophy of person-centered care. And the next one says, it is meant to remind us that working with and caring for people includes being present, active listening, and remembering the importance of autonomy, self-determination, and human rights. And this one, which speaks volumes, what has been undervalued is the incredible impact that personal connections play in bringing subject matter to life, moving from theoretical learning to experiential learning rooted in empathy and relationship. People often remember what they have felt rather than what they have heard. So when you look at the recommendations in the person and family-centered care guideline, I'm not going to read them through, but if you just look briefly at this slide, it speaks very quickly to therapeutic relationships, verbal and nonverbal, building empowering relationships with the person, listening and seeking their insight, and then documenting that and working forward with their plan of care using that information. So the Resident Bill of Rights, we've all probably seen the CLEO and it has within it the 27 Bill of Rights, and the Through Our Eyes program, bringing the Resident Bill of Rights alive through the program. That's exactly what it does. So the booklet itself, the CLEO booklet, can assist residents, family, and staff in understanding those rights as well. So how does it align with the Long-Term Care Homes Act? Well, Section 24 speaks to ensuring that the resident and/or their substitute decision maker, if any, and any other persons designated, have the opportunity to participate to the extent possible in the development and implementation of their care plan and in reviews and revisions of their care plan. So again, here's a couple more of the recommendations right out of the guideline, speaking to developing a plan of care in partnership with the person that is meaningful to them engaging with the person in a participatory model of decision making and respecting their rights, and collaborating with them, sharing information to promote understanding and respecting the person as an expert. So I'm gonna just introduce a couple of speakers from a couple of different homes. Before I do, I just want to speak quickly to the program itself. If you haven't pulled it off the shelf, it is put in a manner that it doesn't have to be a resident, that the program itself, you work directly with the resident. So Sarah and Sandy, that are going to share their experience, have worked through the program at this point and are going to talk about it. But it's also important to know that the residents themselves don't have to be able to speak, or they can have some cognition challenges. And if you get into the program, you will see that through OARC's videos that you can access as well, and the different ways of using the program to bring the resident perspectives to life. So I'm just going to introduce now Sarah Davis. She is the Resident and Family Service Coordinator at Temiskaming Lodge in Haileybury. And I do want to thank Sarah. It was actually, I was able to sit through her presentation, her initial presentation, and with the resident from their home. And I truly appreciated just being able to do that and have that experience. So she's going to speak to her experience going through the Through Our Eyes program. And then Sandy Campbell's going to speak next. Sandy is activation aide at FJ Davy Home in Sault Ste. Marie. FJ Davy home is actually in year 1 of their pre-designation, going through the Spotlight designation with our program. And FJ Davy is quite a large home, so they have actually, they're implementing the Person and Family Centered Care Guideline, and they have 6 of their full-time activation aides actually working through the Through Our Eyes program with 6 individual residents. So she's going to speak to their experience as well. So I would say go ahead, Sarah. I believe Josie Lee's unmuting your line.
Perfect.
Hi,
Thank you.
Sarah, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me all right?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. As Frida said, I'm Sarah Davis, and I work at the Temiskaming Lodge in Haileybury. I'm actually a registered social service worker. That's my background. And my current position is a contract position. I'll be here until March of next year. I'm covering for a mat leave. So when we received this resource, the Through Our Eyes program, we were really excited. Actually, our head office brought the binder kind of more so to our attention, and I started going through it in July. And so we began looking at how we would offer these education sessions. I was very, very open to this experience, but at a first glance, I know the binder can be a little daunting, but it was actually really, really well laid out. The meetings were well laid out. The steps were very well laid out. So to begin, we kind of looked at some of our residents and inquired who would like to be involved. There was a gentleman that was very, very receptive. He really enjoys these types of experiences, and he wanted to meet with me regularly, and we got to know one another. He was open to talking about his experiences in long-term care. As we went through the binder, it was easy to follow. We watched the videos. We were able to chat about different situations, different perspectives he had on long-term care and the rights. We decided that having a PowerPoint would be easier to show our staff, to have that visual included. And we discussed different personal stories that he was willing to share, as well as an activity. At times it was a little bit challenging to meet just due to my role and my schedule. However, he was really, really understanding, and he didn't mind if we had to switch a meeting date. We had our first few sessions in August, and we have had an amazing impact on the staff so far. The staff who've attended have had some aha moments. They've realized that maybe they were holding residents to different standards, or certain things may have a different impact for certain residents, and it's all based on their perspective, and that we really need to get to know our residents a little bit better. Many of the staff now have been inquiring further about the Residents' Bill of Rights, about choices, about cognitive impairments and how they affect choice. Staff are wondering how we can make improvements in our home, especially relating to policies. Actually, I've had a few staff asking why this training is not mandatory yet, which is really, really impactful, and we can see some of the changes already. Staff are wanting more training. They're wanting more experiences to feel what it's like to be in a resident's shoes. So we're actually building on the sessions. We're creating some activities now, having staff experience what it's like possibly to be in a wheelchair for a time, those types of activities. Generally, when we review our rights, we review them yearly with staff. However, we don't really have full-on conversations or really get into different specifics. So this program really is bringing out some questions, and it's really going very, very well. One of the concerns at our home regarding the sessions was the length of time. So in the future, we may have shorter sessions, or we may, during our education days where we take half a day for education, we may make this session mandatory and have it available, which will be really nice. So I see this program really relating to the person and family centered guidelines, just because they're very similar and they go hand in hand, in my opinion. The best practice guideline recommendations, they really do focus on the relationship and the whole person, and how to build and really foster a good relationship with the resident and their family. This would basically then provide a solid basis and good working relationship between the resident and their family members, as well as the staff. The OARC Through Our Eyes program, it has made the staff think about residents, about their perspectives, about their rights, and to see them as a whole person. We have already seen how the staff are being impacted. They're changing their views, they're asking those questions, and we're seeing them relating to residents and asking about their experiences and asking about their beliefs. So I feel these programs align very well, and they seem to share the same types of values and approach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. So Sandy, are you on the line and able to speak about your experience and your team's experience in the home?
I'm unmuted now.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, good. I'm Sandy Campbell, and I am working here at the FJ Davy Home in Sault Ste. Marie, as Frida said. And my background is also social service work, and I just wanted to say, Sarah, it's really wonderful to hear your experiences, because we're not quite at that point yet, or we've presented. So what we've done, we have 6 full-time staff, and we each identified one resident that we would like to complete the program with. And the residents represent, they have varying levels of cognitive and physical abilities and the relating challenges. And although you can't always have a person work with a person who's able to speak, you don't want to do all the speaking for them, and you really want to make sure that it's their voice that you're hearing. Initially, it was difficult to communicate the concept and to direct the residents to identify rights they felt compelled to research. And the booklet in the binder is called, there's a booklet called Every Resident, and it describes the 27 rights in language that's more easily understood by the residents. So it has the formal language, but then it has an interpretation of it that's quite common language. So what I did was I utilized that booklet and I referred to page 30, which is the topics of discussion list. And it directly relates to specific rights and allows the residents to begin to relate their own experiences to a concept. And the lady that I'm working with heard C, identify who you are every time, and she immediately was drawn to exploring that issue. So that one directly relates to number 7. Every resident has the right to be told who is responsible for and who is providing the residents direct care. Also, on the ORC website, they have supporting videos for each stage of the program, and they're wonderful, and I really recommend utilizing those. Many of the residents are initially hesitant to speak up because they worry about offending staff or getting someone in trouble. And through continued conversation and encouragement, they were able to speak. And they often related to the idea that they became spokespersons for fellow residents who may not have the voice to speak. At this point, we haven't presented to anyone yet, and we're all in various stages of exploring the rights, creating opening and closing statements. And we have described the program to Residents Council and Family Council, and they're all very excited about that. At our first meeting with the group of residents, one lady disclosed that she's really annoyed that people don't use her proper name. She's also always identified with a shortened version of her name, and she says people use the formal version, and that's her church name. So our department approached management and requested that residents be allowed to display their preferred name outside the doors, and that was changed. And that's just one way that you can make a big impact, because we all identify with our names and we should be allowed to carry that name. Staff often don't wear name tags, so residents usually have no idea who they are. And some of our staff took Montessori training, and one of the girls created Montessori name tags for us. So they're in a large font, and they just have your first name and your department. And it was a real shock to be walking around the building and have people, call you by your name. And recently, all staff were provided with the Montessori name tag. So that's another way that this program has impacted us already. There's a video that comes with the Through Our Eyes binder called 27, and it is extremely powerful and emotional piece to watch. And there are residents in the video, and they each say one of the rights. So we thought that it would be more impactful for our staff to witness our residents saying the rights, so we created our own video. And residents that were asked to participate were really interested in the initiative and were happy to play a part. And we even got staff to take part and convinced Frida to be in it. And that video is now in the final editing stages. There really, as Frida said, there really couldn't be anything that's more involved in person-centered care than this program. We take resident concerns and requests relating to their rights and showcase them in staff training sessions. It really helps us to realign to the true reason we're here. It's all about the resident and doing all we can to provide proper care while respecting dignity and upholding their rights, even if it may not always be what's most convenient for us. It's a reminder that we're dealing with people, and they are the focus rather than the workload. We all can become complacent over time, and Through Our Eyes is a way to reconnect to the core values that brought us to this field in the first place. And it restores the focus of care to the individual. And if you're cognizant of resident rights, you'll be upholding all of the recommendations for person-centered care. And I feel like it gives the residents back their voice. And it really does teach you to look at things in a different way. And, it's always about, it's not about how it's intended, it's about how it's received. So things that we would never even realize maybe that we were doing that are kind of stepping on resident rights. You know, it's important to realize that. So I think this really helps to turn it around that way. So this follows all of the evidence-based practice as far as I can see. And it says one of the common themes says care is organized around and respectful of the person, communication, collaboration, and engagement, and respecting the person and personalizing care by promoting the person's strengths, self-knowledge, preference, and goals for care based on their beliefs, values, culture, and their experience of health. So that's where we're at right now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah and Sandy, for sharing the experiences that you have had within your long-term care homes. So it just goes to show we are all here for providing care to our residents and using all the resources that are available through RNAO, through the best practice guidelines, and through the Ontario Resident Councils Association and their program through RIs. Using the resources available, we can actually make a difference. And the two staff that spoke were both from the therapeutic recreation group or activation group. This is a team effort that needs to happen regardless of what your role is in a long-term care home. You can use your champions to move your practice change forward. So this is another example of a couple of our homes that have been working with implementing the person and family-centered care guideline, and they've used a multidisciplinary or interprofessional team in making the work move forward within their organization. Another organization that we have has used this guideline to create some report cards that you can actually find on our long-term care toolkit in the person and family-centered care specific topic. That you can use both with your staff and with your residents to understand if you're actually doing the care that is person-centered. And it involves all levels of staff. Communication is the key. Each one of the homes have spoken how they shared this information with all stakeholders within the organization, with residents and the families, making sure everyone knows why you're doing what you're doing. Is what makes the difference, and it also helps to sustain the practice change. Again, some of the evidence that shows success for improving your resident and family satisfaction score over a period of time, and then comparing to the other organizations, long-term care is regularly monitored, and you can have information, access to all the indicators. It's really easy to see when you're doing a focused, systematic approach and making a change in your practice setting, that you can actually show improvement both for clinical outcomes and for improvement in resident satisfaction. I believe Sandy shared some of these testimonials with you. These are the testimonials from residents and from staff in FJ Home while they've been working on the Through Our Eyes program. I'm not going to read some of them, but one of them was, loved the I am statements, and she's been asking more and more about her rights, as mentioned just now. Again, making a difference, a small change can make the big difference in the life of a resident. We do have references provided. You will have access to all of them. As we said, everything is available on the website, both for the Through Our Eyes program and the RNAO best practice guidelines are available free on the website. And contact information for Frida and myself are provided here, or for the overall program at LTC-BPP@rnao.ca. And I'm going to hand it over back to Josie Lee and open it up for any questions.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to Sarah and Sandy for sharing your experience. I just want to let you know that on behalf of OARC, I'm sitting over here behind my desk with a huge grin on my face. It's extremely exciting to hear your stories and experiences and to hear how the program is really coming to life within the homes and making a difference for the residents. So thank you. We just have a few minutes left. I'd like to open it up for questions. Just a reminder that you can share your comments and questions through the chat box located at the bottom of the toolbar, or you can unmute your lines and speak with us directly. So I'll give everybody just a couple of moments to gather their thoughts.
Jocelyn, I believe the presentation is available to everybody.
That's right. So the presentation is available to be downloaded through the materials section, which is again located at the bottom of your toolbar. So you can download the slides that were presented here today, as well as the family and resident-centered care best practices.
I'm not sure if there are any questions online, but if people have any questions, I've put our contact information up again. And if you, hopefully, most of you on the line are familiar with who your coordinator is for your specific home. If you are not if you need any contact information, you can email me at esicball@rnao.ca or use the generic long-term care program email, and we will respond to all questions and connect you to your appropriate coordinator. This is something that we all can do very easily in working together and using the resources from OARC and combining it with some of the evidence-based resources that are available to you. It can make a huge difference in your organization.
So there's just a number of comments being left in the chat box around the excellent and wonderful presentation that everybody just received. So at this point, I will echo those expressions of gratitude. So a big thank you to both Suman and Frida for their wonderful presentation this afternoon, and for all of you that took the time out of your busy day to join us. I would like to personally thank you. And at this point, if there's no additional questions, I will say goodbye for now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.